Welcome back to the Fast Lane here at the Nexon Arena. We just zapped our way back in here.
Got our Doppler effects and everything. Coming back for Deer versus Classic.
PvP, our first of the night, our first of Fast Lane.
I'm just going to make car noises this entire time, Valdez. This is going to be my contribution to the broadcast.
There are other things that are fast that are not cars. A cheetah is fast.
Like Jin airplanes.
Jin airplanes are fast. But other stuff that is not machinery.
Well, that is very true. Well, innovation is not playing tonight.
A hummingbird is fast.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Well, here we go. It looks like we're just going to jump on into this. I was pretty surprised. The map pool will finally be our first giant 4-player map, Whirlwind. Be map number 2, guaranteed to see that one. Starting out on Abyssal Reef, the map we have seen, I think, probably our biggest discrepancies in today. It always looks like one player just totally gets it and the other one's maybe a little bit shakier. But I don't think either one of these players has quite the same massive deficits as in matchups that we saw, at least game number 1. Deer, Abyssal Reef, not quite his map. Classic, a little bit favored in this matchup.
We are here. Fly better, fly Jin Air. Okay, they remembered to do it this time.
We do it again. Oh my! What is the pattern here? There's a pattern I can't figure out.
First, third, and fourth series.
Obviously, some Fibonacci sequence. All right. Well, that's Deer. This blue Protoss player is Classic. Now, Classic is a master class. He's the best teacher in the world at PvP. Next to guys like Hero, who already advanced. He's gone on to greener pastures. Classic is so good at this matchup, but it was Deer that was able to pull a surprise victory out over Hero in our final round of SSL Challenge. So really kind of surprising. I don't know which way this is going to go.
Yeah, it took him out 3-1, and that was when Hero was on top of the world. I remember going into that cast, and I was like, okay, this should be a very quick series between Hero and Deer. It is PvP. It's a mirror matchup. Maybe we see something crazy. And we did see something crazy, but it wasn't because Deer threw like these wonky, weird cheeses at him. He played some pretty strong PvP and outplayed Hero and won the best of 5, which is really hard to do. So, Classic, he does have that reputation of being a very strong PvP player, but it's definitely hard to follow these players week by week and know exactly what their form is in every matchup. We basically only have the stats to go off of and the games that we've watched to really think about where these guys are at any given day.
Yeah, and Stats isn't even playing today. So it's going to be a Nexus coming up for Classic. He's looking to play a little bit more of a macro-focused game. On the other side, Deer, one base in it for now, and it looks like that might just be, the play here. Getting flashbacks to Wings of Liberty. See 1 gate, 2 gate, 3 gate, 4. That's as high as you have to count as a Protoss player back then. And then you win as many tournaments as MC did. So coming into here, we're still trying to get into Premier. One of these players will be relegated back down to day number 2 of the Fast Lane. So you're not totally out of the running, but you do have to play a whole nother day. Winner of this will go on to our final match and eventually face the opportunity to promote. Probes getting a little bit of a high five. Those were not necessarily high five probes. Those are the antisocial probes that pass each other on the street.
The second day of Fast Lane, it has Byun and Patience in it, as we mentioned before. So specifically Byun, I think a lot of players are definitely a bit worried about playing up against Byun. Although Deer did 3-0 him in the last day of Challenge, so.
Deer had this really surprising finish to his season where he just started bopping out players that were traditionally thought to be much better than he had been doing. He just really stepped up his game. And a lot of respect to that. Sometimes we'll kind of malign players who really struggle or suffer with a player or a matchup or just overall in our season. But you really do have to give credit where credit is due to players that really step up their game and start to take out these titans of players that Classic very much was in this matchup. But a lot has changed, and I think specifically what changed PvP so much is the buff to the Tempest, so that now no longer can you just go into these massive Sky Toss armies, because Tempest just kill everything. Like, you can target down the carriers from a long way away. Tempest versus Tempest is everything explodes because they deal like 52 damage a shot or something like that. So that is a big change. And so we're going to look for maybe a more early game focus. Okay, yeah.
Focused focus.
Hocus pocus. There we go. From these guys, Proxy Pylon already being started close to Deer's base.
Yeah, and that is what we have been seeing a lot more nowadays. It's more about the ground armies, the Archons, the Immortals, just tons of Adepts mixed in, and it's really just about how you get there. And again, Abyssal Reef, I say it every time we come to this map, it's a very passive map. You sometimes see early shenanigans and small stuff like this, like one kill on an Oracle, but you don't see players really killing each other too early on. And already, Classic definitely has the advantage with the earlier Nexus, but Deer looking to claw his way back here with a couple of Oracles.
Oracles killing Adepts. Don't see that every day. And neither Oracle has been really that effective, which is the slight little shield regen, keeping that Oracle from dying thanks to taking damage from those previous shots, and now transitioning into that Phoenix to try to keep control of this air and get that scouting information. The real thing to watch out for here is who commits to either heavy Adept and maybe Phoenix, or Adepts or Phoenix or Oracles to try to get the harassment units in there, or you just build up a bunch of Stalkers and Immortals and try to shove your opponent into the ground. A Zealot Charge actually on the way here for Classic, kind of another new thing that's mixed up a lot of PvP, just because it is a lot cheaper. A lot of players just go for the upgrade by default. Ooh, gotta be careful. Oracle poking in,
gotta
getting
fly
fast. Yeah. That Oracle, better fly out of there.
Better fly, better fly. I like that.
I was gonna say just better fly out of there, but then you're half of the way into the slogan anyway, so you just gotta complete it.
Yeah, you just gotta chill out just a little bit if you get an opportunity.
Third base on the way now for Deer. Was the second player to throw down his natural, but now going a little bit more quickly into the third, although Classic matching it pretty similarly. And Templar Archives on the way here for Classic as well. So I love to see the divergence in build here, even though Divergence itself was a terrible movie.
Yeah, and as we're talking about, I mean, it's just like both players have decided, okay, we can't kill each other. It's Abyssal Reef, it's PvP. I'm not expecting you to hit any timing. I feel like maybe Classic with his charge might look to do some harass with that, but outside of that, it's just how quickly can I greedily get out some tech, get out my third base, and get a stronger late game army than my opponent can at this point.
That pylon across the map for Classic, I definitely thought he was going to do something with that, but looks like he's just going to be saving that a little bit for later. That's the gum on the bedpost overnight. So we'll see if that pylon loses its flavor or not. It's a kid's song.
Is it really?
Yeah, does your chewing gum lose its flavor on the bedpost overnight? Yeah.
What the hell?
It's a song, man. I don't make this stuff up. I also don't stick my thumb in pies, which is another kid's song as well.
I never heard that one either.
Little Jack Horner sat in the corner.
Oh yeah, I've heard that.
Stuck in his thumb and pulled out a plum. And then he says, "What a good boy am I?" I'm like, "You put your thumb in a pie, you idiot." What are you doing? That doesn't make you a good boy. It makes you pretty dumb.
Eat it with a spoon, you civilized
Why you? I don't understand.
Being.
Who makes these things?
Those songs are from a long time ago, Rapid.
Indeed they are. Much like some of these builds. I was watching... Who was I watching? One of these guys laddering the other day. It might have been Patience, I think. And he 4-gates his opponent and just wins the game instantly. I'm like, no. We all made a rule after Wings of Liberty. Nobody was allowed to do that build anymore. But hey, it's still a thing out there, even though it's kind of a blast.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that stream, by the way, because one of the weird, what do you call it? One of the weird things that came out of the Pro League ending, Kespa kind of disbanding all these teams, doing that, is that a lot of these players, they mixed in streaming into their job, you know? And so all of these top-level Korean StarCraft 2 players are streaming very often. So it's really cool that we get to see that a lot more often than we used to compared to the Kespa era.
Yeah, I was watching Dark versus Beyond. I think they hit each other like 4 times in a row on the ladder. Like, this is basically GSL Finals. I just get to watch it on stream. So definitely go out there, support.
First-person view. Yeah,
support these players, guys. Watch them in tournaments. Tweet at them on Twitter. Follow their streams. It really helps keep not only them and their careers alive, but just helping to support players that are just so incredibly good. So now we get to see a big push here materializing for Classic, finally getting that value from that proxy pylon, and he will ferry the slower units, these High Templars in Warp Prisms across the map, joining up with 3 Immortals, knocking at Deer's front door.
He has 6 High Templar. He's adding 2 more, but 6 High Templar with Storm, and he's got 2 Storm on a lot of those High Templar. So he's looking to blanket everything that Deer has with Storm at this point.
There it is, first one going down there. Lots of damage, even taking on a Stalker with almost just Storm, canceling this 4th base, putting a lot of pressure on. Zealot warp in to try to get some harassment in the background. Classic, he's looking to really deal some damage here that Deer can't deal with.
Storm does so much damage against these Protoss units, actually.
I'm just trying to think of what sentence I just said. I don't know, that did not go out the way I wanted to. Good stasises, though. Stasi, they're catching out the majority of Classic's units that are trying to come around the side. No more wards just yet, and oh, look at those storms just continually forcing Deer to reposition.
It's really cool if you can mix in this many storms. The sustained damage over the course of this long fight is really going to do work for you. Look at that. And a lot of these Immortals in the back and the Archons in the front are losing all their shields.
And Classic gets the value from storming and then using the follow-up Archons, whereas Deer just hit him up with Archons. Now, this is the big change. A mothership cloaking up this army. However, Deer has been unable to kill this Observer thanks to Classic's impeccable control.
A lot of the Immortals do stay alive in the back here for Deer, and that really clutch mothership, as you were talking about, able to cloak up everything for just enough time. Also Classic kind of sitting underneath a couple of overcharges for a while.
Right.
Does have to regroup. It was a pretty cool fight. Still has that Storm. Can mix that in the future if he wants, but we do see him now committing to the Fleet Beacon and the Stargates.
Again, with the 2 Archons somehow fitting in the Warp Prism. Somebody, thanks to the power of the internet, communicated a pretty rad idea to me that the units in Warp Prisms are not actual units, but rather the data stored. So they basically like 3D print the unit back out, so it just has to store the data. So like the data for a Colossus is like a bunch of data, and so it fills up the hard drive of the Warp Prism. I feel like hard drives in the future probably hold quite a bit of data. So I don't know if that's necessarily a legitimate, strategy, but it's a cool idea.
3D printing a Colossus, that's got to be a crap ton
Someone
of data,
out
right?
there has done that, Valdez. Wow, actually only getting one of the fastest Usain Bolt Zealots out there, runs right into a cannon and dies. Yikes.
The thing that gets to me is, why is a Colossus exactly twice the amount of data as 1 Archon, and why is 1 Stalker
you ever seen those
like 1/2 of an Archon?
You ever seen those Psyduck IQ tests? It's like, 3 fries plus 1 burger equals 6, but 2 fries plus a burger and a soft drink is 12. I'm like, well, not only is this just fully ludicrous, but also maybe that's Warp Prism math as well.
Perhaps. Well, here we go. Coming on in is Deer with his big army. Still storms do remain, but the pickups on the High Templar in the back here by the Phoenixes of Deer are quite nice.
Indeed they are. Mothership getting a lot of value out, but look at the immortal backbone of Deer's army. It's held for so long, but finally Classic looks to be pushing through.
Yeah, it looks like just those storms have done enough. Nice recall to save what Deer has, but a very not great fight for Deer.
Indeed. Not great it was, Valdez.
Bad.
Oh, not great it was. That's what that fight was. So Deer does recall, doesn't lose the entirety of his force. The Classic hanging on, has his 4th base up, running, and ready to go. 5th on the way. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I can count. I counted past 4, Valdez.
You did it.
Give me another diploma. All right, 5th base not in the works for Deer. He's thinking about it, but after pulling back, he's going to have to invest a lot into replenishing that army. There it is.
2 Zealots taking on the world.
Zealot versus the world. We've got GSL versus the World, a tournament coming up here in not too long. Really excited for that one. Zealot versus the World, a less exciting tournament, Valdez. Here are Zealots versus Warping and Zealots. That's also not a very fair fight. They do take out a lot of the forces being warped in. Several probes going down at the same time is just forcing Classic to occupy himself away from Deer's base.
Deer's just a little bit late on this Stargate production, and he's going for Tempest, which you were talking about before. If he can get to a large enough Tempest count, that will be very nice for sniping carriers out of the air, but I'm not sure if Classic will give him the time to get that number.
So this is kind of cool. Classic is going to go back into his bread and butter in the PvP matchup, and that is massive sky toss transition. It takes a lot of time and curating to get here, but once you're here, Classic used to be just the best player in the world at playing the style. Times have changed, and so now we get to see whether or not they've changed too much and Classic needs to upgrade and get with the program. If Deer comes out with enough Tempest, he's got 3 on the way right now, and that is good enough to deal with the style of Classic. Classic, all of a sudden, he's got to install a big update in the middle of the series.
Well, I've seen it happen before. Sometime around game 2, you're halfway through, and finally that update completes. You patch your computer, you get that information. And you also see Deer is going for disruptors here, so kind of just hoping to snipe stuff out of the sky with his Tempest and get some really nice AoE damage on the ground units. And those disruptors can also hit even if your opponent's units are cloaked. So that'll be nice fighting up against this mothership of Classic.
Classic keeps trying to run these Zealots around the backside, but Deer does a good job at replenishing stasis wards back there. Yeah. So several times Zealots have just gotten stasis over and over again trying to run back through there. Turnabout fair play as Deer tries to run through with a few Zealots of his own. What are these Stalkers doing? What, I mean, the units...
Stalker against the World, Zealot against the World,
How do 2 Stalkers get that deep into your base? Okay, I mean, they will die to all these Tempests, so at least Classic will know what's headed his way. Shields on the way for both players, but faster for Classic as he will finally bring this big Sky Toss army to bear.
Yeah, the Shields upgrade is going to be really cool for everything that this army does have. Deer just move commanding into Classic's army to start it off. You can see what he's doing, though, with the Tempest, trying to snipe the Mothership core, or rather the Mothership out of the sky to begin with. He's getting really close.
So this is a really cool dance to watch. I think we're using the word cool mostly because we both wish it were a lot cooler, as it is very hot right now. The Tempest is very slow. Same thing with the Mothership core. If you can get on top of the Tempest and take them out, that's exactly what Classic is doing. He's able to limit these Tempest numbers, taking them down one by one, but are there enough Interceptors to stay alive? The Archon's dealing a lot of splash damage, taking out several of these Interceptors. The Tempest count lowering one by one. They are starting to fall.
And look at that, a big warping of Zealots on the ground, and as you were saying, just more stuff here for Classic. Doesn't matter if those Tempests can do the damage. There's not enough of them, and also a bigger ground army here for Classic. So he takes out the base and the majority of Deer's army, and it looks like he's done it here for game 1.
These Tempests deal ludicrous amounts of damage, and with these Disruptor balls starting to hit a little bit, if you can hit those, get the right shots from the Tempest on the carriers, it might be enough. But they're, like you said, Valdez, just not enough Tempests. You can't produce them quickly enough. The Interceptor count has been replenished for every single carrier that survives. And GG, that's Classic, taking game number 1.
It took a while, 17 minutes, 24 seconds, but he does the job on Abyssal Reef. And I think we're going into Whirlwind for game number 2. Yes, we are. So an even bigger map. Perhaps a little bit less defensive, but again, bigger. So we'll see if it does get to that very late game situation again. I would have to expect it here.
That's just a textbook Classic game, a literally classic game. So he pulls out his bread and butter, his cheesy mite and toast, if you're from that hemisphere, and really just sort of spreads Deer's forces thinly across his delicious snack. There we go. All right, we finished our analogy. a victory in and of itself, Valdez. Game number 2 coming up, and it should be absolutely exciting. Deer knows what this feels like. He's gone toe-to-toe against Classic, and Classic shoved this strategy down his throat over and over again. They traded games in their challenge series, but now the true challenge is upon them, Valdez, in game number 2.
Here we go, game number 2. Cross spawns to begin this one. Up in the top left, it is Deer. Looking to fight back, doesn't want to go to day number 2 of the fast lane.
His opponent, the blue Protoss player, bottom right-hand corner, Whirlwind, is Classic. All right, our first trip out on one of our big 4-player maps. Cross spawns, farthest distance that you can spawn in this tournament away from your opponent. Fortunately for Protoss players, the reinforcement distance doesn't really matter if you use warp-ins to circumvent that, but it's still a thing. It's
a different day and age now. I truly wish you could warp in a carrier.
I wish I could warp in a Happy Meal right now.
That would be pretty nice.
You know how in, what is it, Star Trek, where you just replicate your food, whatever you want, just go to the replicator?
You can have whatever you want, and it only costs data, I guess.
If I want a probe, can't warp that in the future, maybe you can. Technology keeps improving.
StarCraft 3, maybe you can.
I think it's Moore's Law that says that in the future, probes will be twice as powerful and twice as small.
Something like that, yeah.
If Moore was a Protoss player, that's what his law would say. The high five, and ooh, that was an actual high five. All right, we got some power friendship.
That was like a headbutt, not really a high five, yeah.
I think that, what is that, a Glasgow high five? Something like that. They do meet in the middle of the map, and scouting, I think, a little bit less effectively. It will be Deer that gets the first scout on a Classic. The other probe a little bit slower behind. So I'm looking for the divergence here in these builds. We saw Classic really proving that if you do get ahead enough in that carrier count and can overwhelm your opponent's Tempest, you play that seesaw battle correctly, he could still do what he has always done, and that is win the PvP late game. But you do have to get there.
Both these players are going to go for Adepts here. I remember there was one, maybe it was Hero versus Deer, where they always went for the...
I think it was actually this matchup, Deer versus Classic.
Where they always went for something different to the Adepts. One player would do 2 Adepts, one player would do 2 Stalkers.
I think in the previous matchup of these 2 players in Challenge, they kept like trading builds back and forth. And Deer would say, all right, your build beat me, so let me just do your build. And then vice versa would happen. So it's been a lot of diversity. Always cool to see the subtle changes and nuances that illustrate these players' turbulence.
You brought. I was going to say it when you were talking about the very classic game, but I wanted to let you have it. It is your word, after all. You copyrighted it on the broadcast.
Well, I think Geoffrey Chaucer in A Knight's Tale copyrighted that, but it's a great word.
No, it was Rapid on the GSL, I think.
I promise, man. Come up with these things myself. Tried and true to the history of the English language, I just make things up and consider them words, or I steal them from other languages and import them to my culture. That's the way we do it. All right, well, here is our first Phoenix
dun, dun, dun.
coming out.
And Classic's going Oracle, so Deer with the good read. The later Stargate, but
Phoenix versus Oracle is like rock, paper, scissors when there's only like paper and rock. You just always go paper and you win. It's pretty good against rock most of the time. So I always
feel like it's rock and scissors.
Okay, we can do rock and scissors. Both of those pretty painful. I never really thought paper would really win much of a matchup. I never understood how...
cover the rock.
Yeah, but what does that do? You cover the rock.
You make
the rock's still
obsolete. Doesn't matter. It's covered.
The rock...
Now the paper it's taken the rock into its form.
Is that what it's done?
Actually, no. I guess it's the paper that takes the rock.
This is why Guy by Bow makes so much more sense. All right, first Oracle coming in, but this is the big force that's there to deal damage. Classic getting with 4 Adepts, taking out a sizable number of probes. Now the pull is good. and the Phoenix are there to try to limit this Adept number. Still several probes going down. Adept shade out to stay alive.
Yeah, look at this. The one Oracle has gotten 0 kills, and the Phoenix does take it out. So Classic trying to get back here with this own Oracle. It looks like he wants to hide it up to the top right. Not a bad idea. And Classic committing a lot to trying to do some economic damage.
Well, this is really surprising. I don't think I've seen this particular build in PvP for a while. Just going for a critical mass of these, I almost said Corsairs, wrong game. The Phoenix, they'll be able to control the airspace for now. Still have to watch out for overcharges, but if they find an Oracle, it's not going to stay alive for much longer. This Oracle, unfortunately, wow, takes out a sentry on the ground.
Yeah, really good positioning on that. There's not another overcharge just yet. It's really close. He wants to keep that Oracle alive. Or I thought he would, but
no.
We'll just give it away.
He does
not. A sentry and 4 probes. That's a good amount of damage with the second one.
The sentry especially won't be able to build up any more energy. Full energy on Classic's Mothership core, so he will be able to overcharge to push these Phoenix back, but he won't.
Yeah.
That's what happened, Valdez. I just said it.
He can, but he won't.
Indeed. But this will be not necessarily like a contain, but lots of great information for Deer to see exactly what's out on the map. What's that but another?
We used to see this way back in the day when this build was even more common, where, you know, one player would go for Stargate and then another player would go double Stargate somewhere hidden on the map to overwhelm the one Stargate Phoenix, and that seems to be the idea here for Classic.
This is what's so surprising, too, because if you are behind in air units and you're both producing at the same rate, then you'll just never catch up, so why make them at all? I think it was Artosis that talked about the, the downfall of having one less Phoenix. It's like, well, if you have one less, you might as well have none of them because you'll never win and you'll lose a lot, so you should have just invested that in other tech. Well, this is one way that you can overcome that and really catch your opponent off guard. Classic trying to say, well, I'm behind for now, but with twice your production, I'm going to get ahead pretty quickly.
Yeah, and the general response you see when you notice that you're behind on the Phoenixes is you get the blink, you commit to a strong ground army, you get the Templar Archives out, try to make some Archons, add in Immortals eventually off of 3 bases, but as we're seeing here, this is definitely a different response, and it's one that's a little bit more tricky, and one that Deer should not really expect here. He does have the blink on the way himself, which will definitely help out a little bit later, but Whirlwind is a really big map. Even if you have blink, the Stalkers have to be in position. There's only 3 of them right now for Deer.
Oh boy, and look at this Phoenix count, just never stopping, non-stop. Double Phoenix production and Gateway Explosion behind us. This is really going to catch Deer off guard.
And Deer's attacking. I mean, his Phoenixes can't win a straight-up fight, but maybe his ground army
Look at that, there's 5 Stalkers, Valdez.
5 Stalkers is not enough.
No, okay, there are 5 more coming in to reinforce. I think he's just going to fly around there, try to take out the Warp Prism.
He really wants that. Takes that out. That'll take a ton of power away from this build. But at the same time, he loses 2 Phoenixes, and the ground army of Deer is still stronger. No Immortals here for Classic.
Yeah, with the Stalker reinforcements specifically, Deer will have enough to really deal with this higher Phoenix count. Now, trying to get the micro control, will it be good enough for Classic? He will sacrifice a couple of depths just to reposition. Phoenix number still higher, Classic, but can he leverage that to defeat this very strong push for Deer?
I think he has to give up this base to start. I mean, he's got no Immortals. He has the bigger Phoenix count, but he can't fight this army straight up. And I think Deer, he's on like a small timer where he has to end it with this army, but I think it won't be all too hard for him.
Sniping that Warp Prism was absolutely essential. That's the only reason why Classic might just barely be able to hang on. Here come the Phoenix talent coming in from behind. Overcharges push Deer back for the time being. The Phoenixes are able to lift and pick off a couple of these very crucial Immortals.
Yeah, no focus on the Phoenixes here. Just letting his Immortals get taken in the air, saying, okay, I'll just make a bigger ground army. I don't care about your Phoenixes.
He actually wasn't able to kill that Immortal. I think it dropped back down and is still alive. There's the relift and the lift on several of these Stalkers. Can't blink out of that one, and indeed that will help Classic hang on just barely. Another Warp in on the high ground, and this will finally secure the hold for Classic.
Yeah, he does hold. And what you said before was the most important part of this whole thing. There's no warp prism. The warp bin was so far across the map. It was all the way in the top left at the natural.
Across Whirlwind, our biggest map.
At cross spawns. So at the end of the fight, yes, Deer had the rest of his stalkers, but they were too late.
I think this is confusing. Like, there wasn't even a proxy pylon or any fallback attempt. You sort of get in this, oh no, he's going to find it again. Oh my, how do you, okay, he does find it, okay.
So that was scary.
A little bit of heavy breathing here, but Warp Prism number 2 does go down. I guess you kind of fall into this rut as a Protoss player sometime, at least when I play that race, it kind of happens to me, where you just expect the Warp Prism to be the most annoying unit, so you can pick up from a million miles away, it never dies, it always lives, you get Warp Prism speed, and it's just so annoying. Until you get it picked off, and all of a sudden you have no fallback plan. Like happened to Deer, he had no warp in, or no proxy pylons to warp in, no other way to get his units there any quicker, and eventually was unable to press that advantage. He's going to try it again, but I think Classic will just be even that much more capable of holding.
Yeah, he's got 3 Archons now. He's beginning to add in some Immortals, and all the Phoenixes are still alive. So you can look at the army supply, and you know it looks like Classic is ahead, and he is, but a lot of it is still in these Phoenixes. Deer's ground army is stronger, but will he have an answer for all of this harass? He's going to lose everything of his mining in the main.
Oh no, an overcharge. Turns out your probe's already dead. Now granted, there weren't a lot of probes in the main because it's basically mined out at this point. But it does point towards another big factor, and that is the economy. If you're going to be mined out of your main, you need to get these outer bases up, and currently neither player able to get a fourth. Still mining, albeit maybe a little bit less here for Deer. He does continue to lose these probes and the Mothership Core.
Trading the Phoenix for the Mothership Core, not bad.
Oh, will he choose to take on those Stalkers?
We'll never know.
We actually could know because you can observe them right there.
I can, but...
What if we just don't tell the audience? They'll never know, but we will. Ha! Then we're just doing a bad job. All right, well, here come these DTs. Cannons in position, preparing for just that.
And Deer, he's saying, okay, I'm going to make 2 more Stargates, and then it'll be 3 to 2 Stargates.
Anything you can do, I can do better. I can make more Stargates than... Well, it doesn't work. We'll see. This game eventually will transition into SkyToss tech. I feel like Classic really established that is still very viable. He is a master of it. He can make it happen. He will once again be the first player to start up the Fleet Bacon.
Yeah, definitely adding that in.
4th base completed and up, ready to go by Deer. It's the first player to extend out after mining out the main to get that economic advantage. 4th base on the way by Classic, but I don't think it's quite up yet. Yeah, just main-arting the probes over there right now.
I was just distracted for a little bit because I wasn't crazy. One of these players was making 2 extra Stargates, right?
Right.
Yeah, they were canceled.
Okay, never mind.
Because they're not made and they're not in the production tab anymore. But Classic will have that Fleet Beacon, as we were talking about. And Deer has a very strong ground army, but it's mainly only Stalkers. It's 20 Stalkers, 6 Archons, 10 Zealots. And they do have charge. Both these players do have charge. But still liking the army better of Classic here with all these Archons.
A big Archon wall with a bigger Immortal wall behind it. A very strong defensive force for Classic. Most importantly, Valdez, he has the high ground. So, big advantage there.
Yeah, the high ground, the Immortals, definitely going to do it. And you can see how much trouble Deer is having just getting up the ramp. Trying to use that blink, letting the charge lots charge up the ramp first. But Classic holding his ground.
And hold he will. 3rd base secured, but the 4th is what's vulnerable. That's the new base that Classic needs to hold on to. Now on a literally level playing field, we are going to find out whether or not Deer can push in.
Good response here. Good mirroring of Deer's army with Classic's own. It looks like Deer, he's going to force himself in, and he does have a lot of charge lots, and pushing in, he will.
A big warp in as well this time. Oh no, the warp in canceled because the warp prism's taken out once again by Classic's Phoenixes. The Assassins strike back again, but it's all about the Archons right now, and it looks like Deer's force might finally be too big.
Looks like it. GG Deer takes him out. with a huge attack there, maxing out on basically just Stalker Archon, and just had enough. The Phoenixes were obsolete.
I mean, how do you beat a Phoenix army? You just build units that can't be picked up. Lots of massive Archons across there, and a massive number of them gives Deer the win in our second game.
So, Newkirk Precinct for game 3. Definitely could go either player's way. As I was saying before, I mean, Deer is this player that's been on a huge upswing after taking out both Hero and Bjorn in class, or challenge, rather, last season. And Classic trying to fight his way back, doing quite well over at the GSL. He wants to get in Premier after having a good showing himself, getting second place in Challenge.
I mean, the challenge is now, do you promote or do you have to go on to day number 2 of the Fast Lane? I mean, I in general enjoy being a part of the Fast Lane as much as possible, but for these players, they want to get out of here as quickly as they can. They should call it the quick lane. That's how fast we're moving. Game number 3 is coming up. I'm trying to do the cheers for the crowd. We're apparently just doing solo cheers today. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to game. Wait, if this is game 3, what is the...
They just randomly choose times to do it.
You never know. That's Deer. He's one of our Protoss players. His blue opponent is Classic, the 4th member of the Blue Man group. He is here in blue. I think he's even in our blue chair as well.
Oh, we've been pretty good about that,
yeah.
Especially
gotta color coordinate
at SSL.
Nobody ever told me I couldn't wear black and blue. I just thought that Backstreet Boys album was the coolest, so I just did that all the time. No, we have learned in the future how to color coordinate the red players in the red chairs, the red shirts on. Got it. All right.
Did it. And for you guys who are out there watching, saying, hey, Newkirk Precinct, we might get, you know, some more aggression on this map. Newkirk is an interesting map because it definitely can get a little bit of early aggression, but it's definitely not the way that things go too often in PvP. And while these players do have to add double gates to start, I would expect another pretty late game kind of air tossy PvP for this one as well.
Now, who builds the 2 Stalkers? Who builds the 2 Adepts? This is a common deviance that we've seen, or deviation, slightly different word, that we see sometimes for Protoss players. At least in this series, both players have chosen to go for more Adept-heavy armies early and then transition into heavy Stalkers, unless they go for these Stargates. I thought the Stargate usage in game number 2 was very subtle, very nuanced. You know, one player having more Phoenixes than, you know, Classic building another hidden Stargate, overcoming them, sniping off those warp prisms consistently. Ultimately, it just was not enough. So this time, we're actually just foregoing all early units in general and trying to tech up just a little bit. And there it is, Stalkers versus Adepts.
Just waiting for that Cyber Core. And it looks like Classic is the one that wants to commit once again to some economic damage, some extra scouting with the Adepts, whereas Deer going to play it a little bit safer. We might see Blink out of him again. And Classic, the only one to go for a scout with this probe, whereas Deer just totally foregoing it to begin with.
I mean, if he finds the pylon right there, Deer has not an auto win, but he's in a great spot. But won't be able to see anything just yet. And it looks like a Nexus is on the way as soon as he gets 400 minerals, which will be in a while.
Sent it out pretty early. I guess he is saturated in
It's just a normal probe, a nervous probe. He's got to pace a little bit before he finally figures out how to build
He's on the
Nexus.
phone. You know how some people, they like to pace when they're on the phone? Yeah, that's him. He's like, when do I have to build this Nexus? Please tell me. I want to put it down.
And
kind of nervous about this.
Put it down. He will. Stalker doing the Terran Tier 1.5 bio thing, marauding these Adepts, takes one out. The second one will finally shade away quickly enough, but here we go. This is really interesting. The shade direction, a lot of times you see Adepts just go out. Like, all right, I got my scouting information, time to piece the scene. But no, this Adept wants to get in, but following the shade on the other side, Deer really on top.
Yeah, big win there for Deer. keeps, Classic does get a full scout of the base, but there was no tech because it was double sentry to follow up from Deer. So all that gas being poured into there. Will it be the robotics facility from both of these players? And Classic just going to be down a couple of extra units and looks like a couple of probes at the same time.
Classic, the tiniest of steps behind, walking pretty much in Deer's footprint for the most part. The deviation, though, should be coming up here in just a minute. Twilight on the way for Classic. Does Deer go the same direction? So he throws down Robo Bay, goes Mass Colossus, loses the game instantly. Bad tech decision, I don't know. No, it's just going to be the same Twilight, so.
It's when he goes into Disruptor drop, and the Warp Prism gets sniped out of the sky,
again.
and we both groan at the same time and say, ooh. Gonna trade 2 Adepts for 1 Sentry.
I'm not sure that these trades are worth. We've seen Adepts do remarkably little so far. Blink just started for Classic. That's the direction he wants to head. The Forge for Deer, so. Okay, there's the counter forge. Wow, I just can't. I'm trying to look for any little difference to distinguish the way that these two guys are playing. And there's Blink added on at the same time, too. So, turns out when you can both research and build the same thing, sometimes you just both do it.
One small difference is Deer gets the hallucination with his early Sentry. So, he gets a full scout of the base and knows pretty much exactly what Classic is doing, whereas Classic doesn't have necessarily the same information, although we do. He is sending out his first observer, and we'll get that information in just a couple of seconds here.
I think it's important to point out at this point, while both players are kind of powering up, there's the support bay on the way. Please don't build Colossus. Probably will not. I just want to point out that a lot of fans and players, and maybe you just watched GSL and you're just tuning into SSL for the first time, a lot of players see big names like, okay, well, this player is just going to win. I'm a big fan of this big player because I've seen him in a lot of tournaments. I'm just going to cheer for that guy. Classic just got done with his GSL performance, finishing in the round of 4, an incredibly strong run. Deer, was there a while ago, but it's been quite a bit since he's had an incredibly strong finish. And I feel like a lot of people may discount him because of that. And yet we see this score at 1-1, absolutely capable of going toe-to-toe with one of the best Protoss players in the world. So you really just got to give a lot of credit to Deer, who absolutely could take this game and be the second player to advance from our fast lane.
Yeah,
after the next game.
Yeah, you'll have to get through Maru as well, but...
No, yeah, Maru.
Yeah, But yeah, it's definitely a good point. I mean, he had a really good showing towards the end of Challenge. I hope that it's really just off the back of hard work, preparation, practice, because I would feel really good for Deer, a guy who has been on top. He knows the feeling just like Classic does, and he's trying to get there once again. So here comes his attack across the map, looking to do a bit of pressure, kind of feel out where Classic is, and his army is stronger, just he doesn't have a Disruptor, so if he can avoid the Disruptor shot, should be in a pretty good spot. Classic, though, with the defensive advantage, has that overcharge. Gonna snipe an Observer for now, slowly pushing this one in, very, very patient. Knows the advantage that he has. There's the Disruptor ball, it's gonna totally miss. Can he force the fight now? It looks like he wants to. There are some force fields coming down. Another Disruptor making its way from the main. Another warp in here from Deer as he slowly picks away at Classic's army.
I mean, you dodge a Disruptor shot, that unit is useless, but can he dodge the next one? A couple of sentries getting picked off, a big blink forward there. There might just not be enough of a backbone. Another Disruptor shot only pops the shields on that Immortal in the rear, and there's just too many units firing for Deer.
Both of the Immortals of Deer survived for so long. It looks like one is about to die. A third Disruptor makes its way out, trying to hold on to this, but the Nexus looks like it might go down. Another Disruptor shot, but it gets blinked on top of. Big move by Deer to take that one out. The third Disruptor trying its best to hold on to Classic's dreams of making it through to Premier, but it's not going to work.
A decent hit, but Classic's army devastated, and the Observer comes back to view the destruction of his third base. And now Deer, with that Blink Micro, so effective, able to dodge the initial shots from that Disruptor, and then blink aggressively in to take out any further shots coming in. Again, just tanking taking the shot full on with that Immortal. It is Immortal. It's lived so long through so much. Now finally it will fall, but Classic has taken so much damage.
Yeah, he's down an entire base. His army is in tatters. He has
Look at these stalkers. They're firing with 3 HP.
Yeah. And there's the extra blink in, the extra warp in, and GG. Deer's going to take it 2-1 and go on to the final match.
Deer looking so good, eliminating Classic's attempt at advancing for today. This is so cool to see Deer, a player that has ascended to the highest highs of StarCraft here in Korea. Lately has been struggling a little bit, stepped up his game at the end of Challenge and is now 1 challenge away from advancing to Premier.
Deer, he's done it, and kind of the way this works out, both of those players I think are in the same booth. And Deer, he looks really happy, but then he saw his friend, his competitor in arms right next to him, felt a little bit bad perhaps. But Deer, he's given himself a really good chance to make it on to Premier here, going up against Maru. This is a really nice match to end out the night. I think either of these players can make it through.
Absolutely, and you know, we talked earlier about what was going to be the best matchup of today, and I think by far it was Maru versus Classic. Well, now we get to see Maru versus Deer. It's our final match of the night. So don't go anywhere, guys. We'll be right back with the final match for the Fast Lane.